And
Oh, it looks like they just started.
yeah, we have Ian on the right and Austin on the left. Ian goes ahead and turn 1 plays that Tapu Lele GX Wonder Tag, being able to search his deck for any supporter that he wants. Usually, and almost for surely, it's always the Bridget turn 1.
Right. Bridget is one of those plays that is very script. Oh, it looks like we might be seeing a Sycamore instead.
Yeah, well, it's the thing with this deck. I don't even know if he actually plays Bridget.
Does he?
No. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy because Bridget has been such a staple in any deck with Zoroark. It's like, well, yeah, I get a bunch of bench Pokemon in play, then I do more damage. But
right, and
with his deck, Sycamore is just better if he can't. Like, he wants to get that Maxis.
Yes, so that makes a little bit more sense. Normally, the reason why Zoroark decks like to have Bridget in the list is that you get more Zoruas. You put them directly into play, and the neat thing is, by having so many Zoruas into play, you meet your 1-turn requirement in order to be able to evolve. So you always have to wait that 1 turn. Not always, there's some exceptions, but most of the time you have to wait that 1 turn to evolve, and if you have 4 Zorua in play already, you can get them out, you can start using trade, getting more cards.
Yeah, and it looks like the cat is out of the bag with that Sycamore. He discarded a Flareon, so Ian's like, oh, okay, I know what's going on here. And now he can formulate the plan. He gets his own Lele, and he does the Bridget play. And that's something you really want to do, especially combined with the Alolan Vulpix that he has active thanks to Beacon.
Yeah, he could be having a really aggressive turn 1, turn 2 here, because if he has a rare candy in his hand that lets him skip a turn in his evolution, go straight to the stage 2, normally you have to go to the stage 1 to do it, then he could be dealing some pretty serious damage as soon as the 2nd turn. And you notice that Oricorio card off at the very top of Ian's bench there. That is going to potentially be really helpful against the Vengence attack, because, as we talked about, you have to have a lot of Pokemon in the discard to make it work. So, logic entails that if there's a lot of Pokemon in the discard pile, then Supernatural Dance, 1 counter for each Pokemon, that's going to deal a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of Vespiquen with its Be Revenge and Flareon with its Vengeance. It really kind of falls into this trap because people are teching for Night March. They're like, okay, Oricorio's in my deck because I need it against Night March. Well, it's inherently just as good against these type of decks too.
Yeah, which is interesting. So that's a little bit of collateral damage that's happening. Some of these Vespiquen decks are getting a little bit hurt by it. Your mileage may vary on how much they're actually getting hurt and how well they can play around it. But I don't actually think we've seen that much Night March today.
Yeah, definitely not on stream. There was a few hovering around the top tables, but
okay.
It's definitely been fallen by the wayside just for these more like Zoroark variant like decks.
Right.
And here we see the Zoroark-GX come down, Lysander bringing up the Ralts with the energy, and Austin will be able to ride his beating for a knockout, taking away the energy that Ian played last turn, and he'll be trying to come back from this back foot.
Right, so it's actually kind of interesting. Even though he played Sycamore the last turn, he's effectively more or less doing what he would have done had he bridged it. So he's got...
Who needs Bridget, right?
Yeah, who needs Bridget when you draw into it? So we've got
overrated.
So we've got the knockout from Zoroark-GX, right? Is beating 20 times the number of Pokemon he has in play. So...
Alright, and then here we see the interesting thing about Ian's deck, which is amazing right now. Tapu Lele, Wonder Tag. He has 2 options. He could either go for the teammates, which he does. You see at the top of his deck, he also had Karina.
Right.
Karina, usually a card you see in fighting decks, but here you can go like, okay, I'll get Glade Rare Candy, double colorless, knock out your Zoroark. Seems pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, with Zoroark-GX being so popular, it really doesn't hurt to have something that can access your 1 fighting Pokemon so easily. It's a little different, it's a little awkward at times, especially since Ian runs a couple Tropical Beach, so by running the Karina over something that grabs stadiums, he has a trade-off by doing that.
But here, with the teammates being able to search for any 2 cards, and the Ultra Ball getting the Glade, he now has the knockout turn 2 on Zoroark-GX. Sensitive Blade deals massive amounts of damage.
Oh, but it looks like we're going to get a lot of massive amounts of damage in return, because that Zoroark from Breakthrough is dealing 10 plus 30 times the number of bench that Ian has. He's got a full bench, so that's a knockout. He's not necessarily missing too much of a beat, but I feel like Ian's got a little bit of a lead right now, don't you?
Yeah, well, definitely taking the knockout on a Zoroark-GX, where Austin's only taking a knockout on the Gallade, but granted, he did take the knockout on the Ralts too, so one thing you have to realize is the Gallade and the Gardevoir evolve from the same Pokemon.
Exactly.
So, you knock out one, it kind of takes away a lot of his outs.
Yeah, and so at this point, where by losing the Zoroark-GX, a card that, with its trait ability, you discard a card, draw 2, you are losing one of your main sources of consistency and reliability.
But there we see another replacement Zoroark-GX, and you will be able to start drawing some extra cards here.
I tell you, as soon as Austin's able to get this Gallade knocked out, then Zoroark-GX is going to be able to roam free for a little bit, assuming that Ian can't just respond with another knockout right away with another Gallade.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely... Oh, there's a Hex Maniac.
Oh.
That's pretty big, turning off any future Secret Springs on Ian's turn.
That's a really well-timed Hex Maniac.
There is the knockout, Mind Jack, dealing a massive amounts of damage, taking out the Gallade. And here we see Versus Seeker looking for that teammates.
Oh, there we go. There's a rescue stretcher at the top of the deck.
Yes.
So half of his decision-making is already there. It looks like he might be going for that knockout, but he's contemplating a couple other things, and it's definitely a tough call, especially since there's the risk reward. On one hand, he's going to be able to get the knockout if he goes for rescue stretcher. That lets him get back that Gallade, that fighting Pokemon, to knock out the Zoroark. But he might be in a situation where that would be his only routes evolved Pokemon. So, and he goes for the Gardevoir. I think that's probably a better long-term play. He's looking to set up and stay in this game and not necessarily put all of his eggs in one basket, although...
Yeah, but unfortunately, the Gardevoir does not take the knockout with Infinite Force. It is only doing 90 damage.
That's right.
Thanks to Hex Maniac not being able to attach another energy. So this Zoroark survives through the turn.
That's right. That's a real big trade-off, because he's going to miss that knockout, and it's going to lead to a change reaction where that Zoroark from Breakthrough could potentially score another knockout with relatively little difficulty, because he has Ian has two Tapu Lele GX on the bench. Those are GX Pokemon, 2 prizes for each knockout. So he could potentially end the game in 2 turns if he draws into the right cards and if Ian does not have the right responses.
Exactly, and you might be thinking, well, why didn't he go for the Rescue Stretcher, double colorless Gallade, take the knockout? Well, it's only a 1 prize knockout, and the thing about Ian's deck that we haven't seen yet, he plays 2 Max Potion. Max Potion with Gardevoir-GX is such a great card, and since it's not really going to get 1 hit, that means, okay, next turn, we'll just tank this hit, heal it off, attach more energy, I'm fine. But here we see the Lysander on the Oricorio. Austin's really trying to target this down before it gets too out of hand.
Yeah, he does have some Pokemon in his discard pile, and he may be angling for that Flareon later on in the game, so his Zoroark from Breakthrough and his Zoroark-GX have a cap to how much damage they can do. They can only do so much, but the Flareon, while it technically has a cap, its cap is much higher, so it could potentially knock out even a 230 HP Pokemon all by itself.
Yeah, exactly. He does play a massive amount of Pokemon at 27, so it's not that far-fetched for him to actually get up there in those numbers. And here we see a Colress from Ian drawing 8 brand new cards, and he's really looking pretty right now. That Gardevoir didn't even take damage, so he doesn't even need a Max Potion.
Nope. Oh, so that actually worked out really well for him. He benefited by playing a little carefully in the last turn. He now doesn't have any damage on that Gardevoir. He effectively forced Austin into knocking out that Oricorio or something else other than the Gardevoir. And as a Gardevoir player, it's nice to have that. So we've got Lucian working on that other Gardevoir Gallade later.
And here we see Acrylia coming down on the bench, vaults an energy to the active Gardevoir-GX, and he does have another energy. Chooses to attach it to the active, and he...
Yep, he's still thinking about it. It's tough because if you overcommit too many resources to one Pokemon, then you end up in a situation where if that Pokemon's knocked out, then you have nothing left.
It's also the fact that if he max potions, he gets rid of 3 energy now.
Right.
And there we see the Infinite Force for the knockout on the Zoroark. 3 prizes apiece, and it's now up to Austin to try to respond. So this Gardevoir-GX is looking pretty bad right now.
Yeah, and at this point, it seems like if Austin wants to score a direct knockout on that Gardevoir, he might have to rely on a 2-shot because I don't see any EVs benched. It seems like he might have to work a little hard in order to be able to get one out into play, to get that evolved into Flareon ASAP.
And there we see a rescue stretcher coming down from Austin. Getting another Zora into his hand, benching it right away. He's like, okay, I need more Zoroarks.
Yeah. Like,
this can't really happen. All I have is one Zoroark and, like, some support Pokemon on my bench.
Yeah, I mean, that little unknown right there from Ancient Origins, you can discard it and draw a card, but that's not nearly as big enough and as cool enough as a Zoroark that trades. I mean, come on. Like, Zoroark is basically like a big unknown
More is always
that
better.
hurts
2 cards
Pokemon.
is better than 1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Alright, and there we see a Sycamore discarding a couple more Pokemon, I believe.
Yeah, I noticed something pretty interesting that Austin did. He put his Pokemon on the bottom of the discard. That seems like a way to sort and organize for his convenience and Ian's convenience whenever they ask about how many Pokemon are in your discard pile, because remember, Vengence does 20 plus 10 for the number of Pokemon in the discard pile, so you'll oftentimes hear people asking, how many Pokemon are in your discard pile? What's in your discard pile? And so Austin can just smile, hand him the discard and say, look at the bottom, it's all there.
Exactly, and here we see a Battle Compressor from Austin, discarding that Execute from his deck, a card that you always want in the discard.
Right.
Being able to trade for free, essentially every turn, that's all you can ask for, and choosing to discard another Battle Compressor because you don't really want to draw into that later.
Exactly, and unlike the Pokemon trading card game online, propagations move very, very, very quickly in real life, where you don't necessarily have the manual
I remember
thing.
the old Sinister Hand discard. that was a pain to go through, just clicking every single one.
But yeah, it's really good now.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And there we see the propagation, and with Execute, even though it says once per turn you can propagate this back to your hand, it's a brand new Pokemon once it hits the discard again.
Yeah.
So you can do it as many times as you want, so all those Ultra Balls get turned on, trades get turned on. And there we see the Ultra Ball for the Eevee finally coming down. This is his big hitter. This is his finisher, essentially. And
that little Eevee, it's going to go up and do a quick draw.
And you also have to remember, Gardevoir-GX has resistance to Dark. So Zoroark still might not even 2-shot it most of the time.
And it could just get max potioned away. So, although, what you said earlier about committing that extra fairy energy to the active is really important right now, because Ian now has 2 good options to choose from after this Riotous Beating for 2-shot damage, but not enough to 1-shot it, because he could potentially charge into the Zoroark and knock it out, or he could max potion and maybe try it. And you know what? Doing the math right now, he is 1 evolution away from 2 Gardevoir-GX in play, so theoretically, and this is theoretical here, but it's actually possible that he could do both, where he could max potion the damage away, he could evolve that Curlia to Gardevoir, and he runs a single copy of Superior Energy Retrieval.
A classic card we haven't really seen since like Blastoise days.
Yeah.
Being able to discard 2 cards from your hand to get up to 4 energy from your discard to your hand. That's essentially 120 damage.
Comes out of nowhere,
Yeah.
too.
And here we see a computer search. I don't know if he's used Rescue Stretcher yet. So no, Rescue Stretcher for the Glade. And remember, Zoroark-GX is weak to fighting.
Although, am I mistaken, or did he discard the Rescue Stretcher?
No, he computer searched for the Rescue Stretcher.
Okay.
And then he's gonna...
And then he just
teammates
played it, okay.
Or Colress, okay. He's gonna rely on drawing Yeah, he didn't get a knockout last turn.
Yeah. This is a pretty subtle little thing, but if you're computer searching for something like a rescue stretcher, it definitely doesn't hurt to put it into your hand, just so you have that little bit of extra mystery for your opponent. Require them to take one more step to figure out exactly what's in your hand. Where, remember, computer search is a card that lets you get another card and automatically put it into your hand. It doesn't have any special requirement.
Does he draw the Glade? I believe it was the first card.
Yeah, like it, yeah, there you go.
There comes down Glade, the mortal enemy of Zoroark-GX. Premonition, ranging his top.
Oh, it looks like he's moving pretty quickly here.
I think he's just excited.
Yeah,
He's like, I
got the Glade and I'm gonna knock out that Zoroark.
Making sure he has done everything in his turn, so he's set up for the next few turns. Remember, he only has to take essentially 2 more knockouts to take the game.
And he has a lot of soft targets because worst case scenario, that Eevee is going to evolve into a Flareon, which has 100 HP. That's easy for a Gardevoir knockout.
The manual retreat, Sensitive Blade taking the knockout on the Zoroark-GX. Ian is now at 1 prize against Austin, and Austin has no evolutions in play.
Yeah, looks like it, and even if he did evolve something, I'm not sure exactly how helpful that will be, so it looks like Austin might angle for another breakthrough Zoroark, assuming that he has the resources to get it into play. Although that might not even necessarily be that helpful for him, because that's a brittle Pokemon.
I think his whole deck is brittle Pokemon right now.
Yeah, when you have Gallade out there and everything's fighting weak, yeah.
Alright, there's a propagation from Austin. There's the Ultra Ball. It's interesting to see how many Pokemon he actually does have, because one thing he could try to do is, if he has N, try to end his opponent down to 1 card. His opponent hasn't set up Octillery yet, but no. Decides, I don't have it in my deck. Okay,
yeah, it's not going to happen.
Game 1. Let's try again game 2.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good idea. I think that maybe things could go a little bit more differently, where Austin, that game didn't look like it was very good for him, but I think that he has certainly some pretty good tools to help him out in the next game, where it's by no means a blowout matchup, where these are actually 2 reasonably even matched decks, but Gallade was incredibly powerful getting out turn 2, getting out again, and that alone basically changed things.
Like, having the turn 2 Sensitive Blade knockout on the Zoroark-GX put Austin so far behind, and the fact that he then got the Gardevoir, and the Gardevoir was able to tank a hit.
Yeah.
And then he had the computer search for the rescue stretcher, and then drew everything he needed off the Colress for the knockout again with Gallade. It's the power of Gardevoir too, is just the way he built his deck. Bull and Vulpix was amazing. Got to use Beacon turn 1.
Karina, I think that was probably my favorite play of the game.
Well, he didn't play Karina, teammates.
Oh, that's right, he did.
I'm still waiting for the Karina.
I'm waiting for the Karina. Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, I'm waiting for that.
It's very spicy, and I want to see it.
I tell you what, the little tweaks, they make a big difference, where every little card that you choose in your list can mean the difference between a 5-0-1 record like these 2 guys have, or maybe something a little less competitive, where if you choose a certain card like Karina or Teammates, and you run that today, and that could potentially make the difference. Oh, it looks like they're setting up.
Yeah, basically, this Gardevoir list is far from standard, and I'm loving it so far.
I love both of these lists. They definitely have twists for today.
And remember, even with a win here, they're still not locked in for day 2.
Correct, so
they need that 7-win mark to be guaranteed in day 2, although they could go 6-0-3, but that's the scary route.
That's really,
you could be
really
6-0-2,
scary.
hoping for an ID last round. Your opponent's like, I'm gonna play it out, like, or you get paired up, or get paired down. Like something can always go wrong. So you really want that safety and comfort of those 7 wins.
And you know what? You're caught in a weird situation where sometimes you have to fight between, do I want to go for the record that is most likely to win me the tournament, or the record that's most likely to get me into day 2?
I've definitely been floundered by that before, where I was a little greedy. I was like, oh, I'm good. My tiebreakers are pretty good. So I decided to play it out, lose, and I'm like, oh no. Alright, I'll intentional draw in, and I ended up not making it. And it's the worst feeling in the world.
I tell you what, I had the opposite thing happen a while back, where I wanted to intentionally draw into the next day. My opponent didn't, so we ended up playing it out. I just ended up beating him, and then I ended up getting more points than I expected.
Yeah. Right.
But he was probably right. He was probably right to want to play it out. Because
game action here, Ultra Ball, discarding Execute. Always the card you want to discard turn 1. You never want to see it in your hand, but you always want it in your discard. So Ultra Ball getting the Zora, and then a Battle Compressor for Gallade. Can we possibly see a turn 1 Maxis?
I think that Sycamore may or may not be a clue into it, because I don't know why you would want to go for a draw card in that spot. But, you know, it looks like you're right, because no reason to go for the Maskey.
Put the Sycamore in for later, like I'll draw versus Seeker sometime.
You know, that's a pretty good point.
And one interaction I always have loved, it's been with Premonition and Unknown, but now Premonition and Trade. You basically just get to pick and choose what you draw. And there we see the Maxie's hidden ball trick coming down turn 1, Austin's ideal start.
Yeah, that's right. This is definitely not Professor Sycamore into just some stuff that isn't quite as competitive. He's got plenty of draw options. He's got plenty of things to help him get what he needs. And as long as he finds his way into a second Zorua, either this turn or next, then he's golden.
Yeah, and Ian's staring down like, okay, I can't evolve next turn. He drew the Tapu Lele for the Bridget, so he will be able to start setting up himself, but maybe he's eyeing down the Guzma? See, that's the card on top.
Yeah, now that's one very interesting interaction, is on the first turn, if you play an energy on your Pokemon, since everybody is running Tapu Lele GX, in addition to its really incredible Wonder Tag ability to let you search for supporters, it also has a strong attack, which does 20 times the number of energy attached to Tapu Lele and the defending Pokemon without including resistance or weakness. So a cute play that we've got here from Ian right now is he's actually going hyper aggressive here. He's going to knock out that Zorua. Yeah,
this is insane. Being able to Guzma bring up the Zora with the double colorless, and with a double colorless of his own, be able to take the knockout thanks to Energy Drive. And this does stall his deck a little bit, like, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice my setup, but I'm gonna really hinder yours.
Yeah, and the incredible thing is sometimes you have a clue into being able to avoid doing that, but in Austin's situation, he had to play the double colorless energy.
Yeah, he had to Maxis. He needed to.
Am I not right that he had to play that in order to trigger the Maxis?
I believe so. And there we have it. No Zora on Austin's side of the field now.
But this isn't too bad actually for no Zorua, because he has Premonition to let him look at and rearrange the top 5 cards of his deck, and draw power option in the form of Unknown. Now, that said, I wouldn't really feel too good with no Zorua in play when I run a Zoroark deck.
Exactly, and it's looking here. Another thing he's trying to do, there it is, the Battle Compressor for the Lysander. He's like, okay, anything you can do, I can do better. I'm gonna Lysander your lone Ralts, and leave you with just a Tapu Lele in play, and kind of punish you for not playing Bridget.
Yeah, and this is one of those really awkward situations where both players are basically taking cues from each other. They are both punishing each other for being aggressive, and as a result, neither of them is set up right now, but at this point there's going to be a little more rebuilding.
Someone has a Gallade in play.
Someone has a Gallade in play. Although I think he'll be able to, Ian will be able to potentially hit that Gallade back, but... Oh, we've got 2 Zorua. So we've got our potential setup for Austin. That's a big deal. So next turn
There's
he has
the Versus Seeker for the
yeah,
Lysander.
just like you said.
Oh man.
Oh,
This is
very
not
well
looking
done.
good for Ian.
Yep, and of course we've got that premonition. Even if he doesn't discard his unknown to draw anything, it's always good to use, almost anyways. There are exceptions, but almost always good to use each of your abilities once per turn to not forget it.
Yeah, you always want to know what you're drawing. Like,
Yeah, that's the thing about Gallade. Like, there's some things that are there's some things that you might not want to use, but that's definitely an ability you always want to use if you can.
and there is the Sensitive Blade taking the knockout on the Ralts, leaving Ian with just a Tapu Lele, but here comes a second one, and I think we'll see a Bridget on
Yeah.
this turn.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this was a situation where Ian was thinking, you know what, it's a calculated risk. If I get that knockout, I might completely turn the game around and take control. And even if he has a knockout on me, I can still set up and just peachy.
So essentially what we did was just take a turn off.
Basically,
Alright?
yeah.
Each player got one prize, and they're still gonna get to evolve the same way, but it's just a turn later.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here, though, is that now you have both players committed to particular Pokemon attackers, where if they weren't committed to those Pokemon to attack, then they would have a little bit more of a likelihood of getting the exact energy combination that they need.
Exactly, and I think Ian's debating his last Pokemon here goes for the double Ralt. Could get that Remoraid to try to help him draw, or even just Vulpix if he chooses not to attack, try to retreat and beacon and set up a little bit more. Yeah, unfortunately for him too, since Tapu Lele doesn't do weakness with its energy drive, it's not going to be able to take a knockout on this Glade.
Right, and that's the one thing that distinguishes Mewtwo EX from Tapu Lele GX. If it were a Mewtwo with the same type of attack, it would be knocking it out. But you know
I
what,
think
Tapu
it'd be
Lele...
a 4 of in every deck. Like, it's already like
Yeah.
a 3 of in every deck, but
Yeah.
if it did weakness, I think it'd definitely be a 4 of in every deck.
Yeah, especially with Psychic Weakness being so important for, like, especially for certain matchups where it ends up being relevant.
And there we see the third Pokemon is the Remoraid. One of the ways Ian has to combat N is Octillery with Abyssal Hand. And there we see...
Looks like he wants to set that routes up a little bit. He says, nope, maybe, oh, he's attaching to the other Tapu Leles.
Alright, and oh, there's a beach in play. I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
why is he drawing cards? The glare on your screen is actually a tropical beach, so he drew 3 cards and ended his turn, choosing, well, the damage doesn't really matter on the Glade. If I have a Gardevoir-GX, I'm going to knock it out anyway, no matter what.
Yeah.
So I need cards to set up.
And once Ian hits a certain point with his setup, he's potentially going to be able to knock out stuff just as he was able to in the first game and take control from there. He might even be angling for a knockout at some point from one of those GX Pokemon on the bench.
Exactly, and there we see Zoroark-GX come down, Propagation, Ultra Ball, most likely getting another Zoroark, so really coming back from getting that lone Zora knocked out.
Yeah, and now we're in a really interesting spot for Austin where he doesn't necessarily have an incredible option here of any one thing in particular. Whatever he does this turn is targeted to advance his overall state, where he could potentially bring up that Remoraid with a Lysander and knock it out. He could potentially work on that Tapu Lele and maybe even knock it out this turn. I don't think so, because he doesn't run any Kukui or anything like that, so he's off.
We see a second Maxie's Hidden Ball trick.
Oh my gosh.
2 Gallade out. It only takes 3 turns. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Deck's working pretty well right now.
Although now you get into an interesting situation where you have potentially redundant premonitions where both of those abilities, it's a once per turn ability per Pokemon, so it's not as if you can only use 1 premonition per turn. Because he has 2, he can use 2, so he can do some cute things like premonition the top 5, Unknown, discard the Unknown, Farewell Letter, draw his top card, and then Premonition again to look at the next top 5, so he would be familiar with 4, and then learn 1 new one. But that's good for math, and it's good for setting up your next turn.
So basically, there's just a ton of digging going on.
Basically, yeah.
Alright, and one card he might be looking for is Choice Band, too. It's a card that really helps him take out these Tapu Lele GXs. He's definitely in the driver's seat right now and doesn't really have any evolutions in place since he just was able to bridge it last turn. Like, remember, this is Austin's turn 3.
Right.
We're not really that far into the game. Like the first game went very quick. I think like turn 5 maybe, and 6.
And it was just a really fast back and forth exchange. But this one was a little bit more conservative and also a little bit more awkward too, where they both had their little shots at each other, and now they're finally getting to their proper setup. So they had their initial start to the battle, and now we've actually got full-fledged Game 2 war.
There we see a computer search from Ian, looking to get some evolutions in play after Tapu Lele taking 130 from Gallade. And computer search being probably just one of the best ace-specs, if not the best.
Right, especially in a deck that requires a lot of setup like Gardevoir, because you have to get Stage 2 Pokemon into play. Those necessarily require more cards than Stage 1 or Maxis. So computer search gives you better math because it lets you search your deck for any card. So essentially it gives you an out to bad hands, it gives you more opportunities to get Bridgets, it gets you apparently a rare candy or a Gardevoir.
And there we do see the rare candy off the computer search into the Gardevoir-GX. Rescue Stretcher getting a Ralts to his hand, and I know he discarded a Sycamore off the computer search, so he has to have at least something else. And there we see the Seeker Sycamore actually chose not to bench the Ralts. And there we see the retreat from the Tapu Lele, attach energy with Secret Spring, double color.
That's the knockout.
Turn, and that is the knockout. Perfect 150 damage with Infinite Force.
Exactly, and now he has himself on what players consider an even prize exchange, and by that, I mean he could potentially get 2 GX knockouts. Remember, GX Pokemon give you 2 prizes each time you knock them out, meaning he could, after this knockout, win in 2 turns.
Exactly, and even though Austin does have another Glade, does have all that stuff, be down 2 double colorless, because remember, at turn 1, that double colorless got knocked off that Zora.
Right.
And then now double colorless getting knocked off with the Glade. So he's really going to try to have to find his other energies. And granted, he does play a special charge, but he'll still need to dig for him. Thankfully, that's what this deck does.
Right, it digs, and it digs really well, although it does not run Puzzle of Time like a majority of the Zoroark variants we've seen today. So as a result, Austin's outs to double colorless energy, his ways to get them back, are fewer. So he has just the 4, then he has Special Charge, which could potentially be a maximum of 6 uses of double colorless.
And like we said before, this Gardevoir-GX, all it does is just take hits. And when you take these hits and then build up enough energy to take these one-hit knockouts with Infinite Force, there's not really much your opponent can do.
Right, and now Austin's in a little bit of an awkward position where he had that really convincing turn 1, but like you said, because of losing that double at the very beginning of the game, he's now playing a little bit of catch-up, and he's just not doing the damage that he needs to.
Alright, Ultra Ball coming down from Austin, discarding 2 Pokemon, and it's interesting to note he did not Propagation for the Execute, and this is why, because he's getting Eevee.
Exactly.
He's like, okay, Flareon needs to be my game plan now, because this Gardevoir is going to be a pain.
Exactly, he's
So,
like, this is my
more
out, this is
Pokemon.
my chance, and so let's get some Pokemon in there, and maybe I'll be able to get up to that magic number of 230 with the Choice Band.
Yeah, with the Choice Band, of course, which we haven't really seen much in this game or the previous game, just because they've been kind of quick.
Yeah, and another thing is that Austin and Ian probably want to be really careful about their uses of Choice Band, where it's a really popular tool card, plus 30 to EXs and GXs, but at the same time, you can only use them so many times, and you can only run so many copies in your deck. You can only fit so many in your deck too, so as a result, you have to be very conservative about when you play them, and very careful.
Exactly, and the thing that always happens to decks that play Vengeance or like Be Revenge is you kind of have to skate this fine line between, well, am I going to try to conserve these resources for later because I'll need these Pokemon, or let's just discard them all so I can do a lot of damage.
But a neat little fact, you might have seen that big green die at the bottom of this screen. That is actually, appears to be them just keeping track of the number of Pokemon in Austin's discard pile for Vengeance.
13 Pokemon right now. That means it's Flareon, if it does come out, does 150 damage, and it's getting up there.
Yeah, now, if you were Ian, you were really wanting to get that Octillery into play ASAP, but apparently not, because it's about to get knocked out, and now Austin's about to get on an even exchange of prizes.
And yeah, there's the stand-in, and then Guzma bringing back up the Glade, and eventually he will take the knockout with Sensitive Blade, putting both players at 4 prizes apiece.
Right.
For good measure. I always use it later.
Yeah, to have that there, it gives you better odds in case you...
Virtual 14th Pokemon too.
Yeah, that's always good. Especially if he's trying to get up desperately to that 230 amount. And what he's doing by scoring this knockout is he's essentially getting on the same schedule of prizes that Ian is. So Ian is threatening to win the game in 2 turns by knocking out 2 GXs. Austin is threatening to win the game in 2 turns by knocking out 2 GXs.
Yeah, exactly. And he could have gone for that Tapu Lele that has 130 damage, but you would still need to take a knockout on the non-EX or GX, and taking the knockout on the Remoraid means no artillery for later in the game, and that might come in big.
Right, that's a big deal because this is a Stage 2 deck that Ian's running, and so in order to get multiple Stage 2s into play, he has to have some reliable way to recover, to draw cards, and he hasn't seen a Galley this game, he hasn't seen his Octillery, he had the Remoraid sitting on the bench for multiple turns, and now we've got the end, so it's...
Yeah, end coming down from Ian, putting both players at 4 cards, but it's not as good against Austin just because with the combination of Premonition, Farewell Letter, and Trade, he will be able to stock his hand up a little bit more and control his draws.
Right, and so the silver lining here for Ian is that even though the Flareon's threatening, the Zoroark Breakthrough is threatening, almost everything except the Unknown and the Tapu Lele are really threatening to Ian on his board, but Austin is running low on double colorless energy. He only runs 4 in his deck, so...
That means only 1 left after Ian takes this knockout on the Glade.
And he runs no other energy, too.
And the magic number with Choice Band, I believe, is 18 Pokemon in the discard.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do our basic arithmetic here. 20, 200, 230. Yep.
Yeah. Simple math.
Not always.
And there is a big card right now, Max Potion, coming down on the Tapu Lele GX. Takes an easy knockout away from Austin.
Exactly, that was a really smart, clever play. You noticed there was only a little bit of damage on that Tapu Lele, but he needed...
130.
Well, a little bit. Everything's relative.
Step 1, Austin does have the Flareon. He does have his 4th double colorless.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Now, with 14 Pokemon in the discard, a virtual 15 with Unknown, he needs 3 more Pokemon and the Choice Band to take the knockout. Here we see Execute, Propagation. Now there's only 12, but that's going to go back.
Oh, yeah.
Discard. And another thing that I would love to see from Austin is he's actually able to draw the special charge. Too.
Right, actually that's critical for Austin because knocking out this Flareon is not too hard, but he'll be able to work whatever game plan he wants because he too runs computer search. Really valuable.
Here we see the computer search discarding to execute, and I couldn't see the other card, but now he can search his deck for any card he wants, and when you need 2 specific cards, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Although, something tells me that we are far from seeing the end of this turn. Austin's definitely going to be trying to set up the end stage of his plan, where he needs to be able to get at least one more double colorless into play at some point. So he has to revolve his plan around that special charge item card.
And yeah, he actually computer searched for the special charge. I love this play right now.
Yeah, I definitely love it too,
and
because
there is the Tapu Lele GX.
Oh man.
Now, he might be running a little low on Pokemon, but getting this Sycamore, it's a very good chance that he draws what he needs. And remember, he still hasn't used Trade or Farewell Letter.
Right, so he has a ton of resources left, even though those 2 Galley that he put into play, they're both gone, but he basically has a computer search for the rest of the game, more or less. He might have to rely on a little bit of luck to go his way, but he has 7 that he's drawn off the Sycamore. He could... Did he already trade this turn?
He has not.
He's not traded, so he still has that opportunity to trade, and he's sitting on the Farewell Letter, which he is cashing in.
15 Pokemon in the discard as of now.
170.
3 more. That means a Battle Compressor discarding 3 Pokemon, or the Ultra Ball discarding a couple in his hand, and then a trade. But...
And he needs a Choice Band, too.
Yeah, he still needs a Choice Band, that's right.
You know, if I'm Ian and I see Austin missing the knockout on this Gardevoir, I'm feeling pretty good, because even though I, as Ian, did not get my chance to knock out 2 GXs in a row, it's just as good to be able to knock out 2 non-GXs, not have any responses from your opponent, and then close the game out the next turn.
Exactly, and here we see Propagation Trade, but I see a Battle Compressor, but does he have enough Pokemon in the deck?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, because
And I still don't see the Choice Band.
Even though he runs 27 Pokemon, that's almost half of his deck. There's still a question of whether or not he has enough, because that requires him
to have 8 in play.
He has 8 in play, and then if I saw that we were at 15 in the discard, maybe 16?
15.
So he would have to have...
3. He has 4 Pokemon left, and he
has
3 of them. So they have to be not prized in his deck and not in his hand.
Looks like...
I think he just discarded a Battle Compressor.
Yeah, now these bigger dice are a little deceptive. I'm not sure if that's a 17 or an 18. Did he actually get 3 Pokemon from the deck?
No, I believe it's a...
They're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Oh, and he whiffed it. He whiffed the Choice Band, he whiffed the amount that he needed to, and this might be a heal up on the Gardevoir.
And depending on Ian's hand, if he can get a Max Potion and replacing the energies, it could spell disaster for Austin.
Right, and it's worth keeping in mind that Ian is sitting on 2 Kirlia, so those are unevolved, not fully evolved Pokemon. It could be anything that Ian wants them to be. They could be more Gardevoirs, but just as possible, one of them could be a Galley. We have not seen a single one this whole game from Ian.
And there is the Bridget he's still deciding on. Chooses to fail it. He pretty much has everything he wants in play or in his hand.
Although, if Ian has the resources to somehow avoid knockout on... Yeah, and that's exactly what he's going for. He wants to avoid giving the Gardevoir away to Austin, so that even though he's losing a GX here potentially, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, there we see the retreat to the Tapu Lele, double colorless, and energy drive for 100 damage, exact knockout on the Flareon. Ian now down to 2 prizes to Austin's 4.
Yeah, and I gotta say, whatever path that Austin takes in order to draw 2 prizes, if that's what he wants, is not really that pretty because Ian is still threatening a knockout next turn.
Yeah, and with the way he's played his bench, he's really mindful of Mind Jack from this Zoroark. It being only able to do 130 right now, or 160 with a choice band, he's not going to be able to take the knockout here, but he will be able to take the knockout on the Gardevoir.
Right, although that was still a pretty good play by Ian in order to keep his bench down. Force Austin at least to play a card in order to bring up something else. So make Austin have those outs to do something. So, more importantly though, in order to get those prizes on the Gardevoir, it kept Austin from playing an N.
Yeah. So, here we actually see Austin kind of setting up for next turn if he has the resources for it.
And if he even has a next turn.
Yeah, benching that Eevee, and then having the choice band on it, he's threatening a Flareon to knock out anything on the inside of the field. He has a ton of Pokemon in the discard right now. Mind Jack will be able to knock out this Gardevoir-GX, but they'll get return knocked out by this Tapu Lele.
Oh, and it looks like we got the teammates, so that is...
And there's Oricorio, and
that's the game! 17-18 Pokemon.
The game.
Wow, so you know what, we've been sitting on that all match, we've been waiting to see that make a big difference, but it did it here. Supernatural Dance, 1 counter to anywhere on your opponent's side, times the number of Pokemon that they have, so that was 17-18 damage counters total.